Hello, viewers. Good evening and welcome to Nezine.com discussion on climate change and environment. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, its latest report has stated that global temperature has already increased to 1.1 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial level. The UN panel has warned that over the next 20 years, the global temperature will increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius, the limit set in Paris Agreement. The report states that the climate change is already affecting every inhabited region across the globe, with human influence contributing to many observed changes in weather and climate extremes that include agricultural and ecological drought, among others. To discuss the IPCC report in the context of Northeast India, which is a biodiversity hotspot and has been experiencing climate change in impacts over the decades, we have with us Dr. Narayan Sharma, an eminent wildlife biologist and assistant professor in the Department of Environment Biology and Wildlife Sciences of Cotton University. Welcome, Dr. Sharma, to our discussion. Could you please explain to our viewers why the IPCC Sixth Assessment Report is important in the context of Northeast India and what are the major concerns? Please carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to say this thing. First of all, a disclaimer: I am not a climate expert, but I think given this kind of a very say disturbing reports that IPCC has published recently, so I think all of us should be aware of what climate change is and how this climate change is going to affect everybody's life. So as you rightly said, I'm a wildlife biologist. So my concerns are mostly towards the wildlife. But as you rightly said, the climate change, the IPCC's report is kind of a warning. I think it's a final warning. If you allow me to say this, it's a final warning for us to behave, or else I think we are already on the verge of so major changes in environment. So IPCC, this particular report is also very important from the fact that many of these say uncertainties which were there in earlier assessment, so that they were able to say say come out with certain confidence. So much more confidence, so much more precise estimates of how in different climatic scenario, how the different components of environment will behave. So as you rightly said, from 1850 to 1900, since pre-industrial revolution or pre-industrial time, till now, I think the temperature has increased by 1.1 degrees Celsius. So that's the global average. So I think for many of us, I think we would think about what's the big deal about 1.1 degrees Celsius, right? So let me tell you that the climate, when the temperature is rising, when the climate global warming is happening, so it's going to affect each and everybody, so each and every life. So nothing is say escape from this say global warming. For example, so the target of achieving 1.5 degree Celsius. So what happened? Every degree of temperature changes is going to be detrimental. So if we say this also this the last decade was also the hottest decade of 125,000 years. So this also says that this is climate change is real, global warming is real. So this is not like some scientist coming out and churning numbers and say like creating doomsday things. So these are very real actually climate change, and there are many evidences. As we go along, we'll discuss some of the evidences what climate change the evidences of climate change is. And this is also the UN General Secretary also said that there is no more excuses, that there should not be any excuses for the countries to deny the fact that climate is changing, and we need to act it. So if we do not act it by 2050, I think if the temperature goes beyond say 1.5 degrees Celsius, there would be catastrophic events. So some of these catastrophic events are already into place. So you must have heard like this wildfire in some of these countries, different countries. There is a so climate change. When I'm saying climate change, so it doesn't only mean that of a rise in temperature. So remember, this climate change is also associated with a lot of other things. For example, extreme rainfall, extreme drought, say extreme fire also. So these are some of the other things which should be also like manifestations of this global warming. So throughout the world, the climate is changing, the sea level is rising. So there are estimated that it may rise to 2 meter sea level. So if that happens, just think about all these low-lying area, coastal areas throughout the world. There are millions of people who are going to be affected, and how that is going to affect the socio-economic dynamics, how that's going to affect the demography, I think you can guess it. So this particular report, I haven't gone like into detail of that report, but whatever summary or whatever gist I was able to go through, this report is extremely alarming. And good thing about this report is that they also come out with some hope that if we say cut down the carbon emissions, so burning fossil fuel, and if we can check the temperature below, say, 1 degree, 1.5 degrees Celsius, or in worst case below 2 degrees Celsius, there is still chance that we will be able to stop or reverse the climate change consequences. Otherwise, if we just go by business as usual, we just say contribute greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, particularly the carbon dioxide and the methane. So this is not going to help us at all. So these are kind of a warning, and kind of a red code. So BBC also said that this is a red code for humanity. So we are on the verge. I think we need to act or Paris. So this, in that sense, I think this report is extremely important. And when you say Northeast India, we cannot just separate from the world, because it's a so I think one very important thing that we should remember is that climate change is a global problem. It's not a regional problem or not the local problem. So if something is happening in, say, Amazon, or say some forest of deforestation happening in Southeast Asia, it's not going to affect the Southeast Asia only, or say Malaysia or Indonesia only. So it's going to affect us also, even though we do not fell any trees, even though we have say, if we protect our forest. So even though we are going to have a impact. So this is a global problem, and I think there should be a global solution to it. And I'm very, very hopeful that the report can be reached to the policymakers, and they can act accordingly, so that we can reduce this carbon emissions or cut down the carbon emission by net zero by 2050.
Yeah, thank you for your insightful inputs, Dr. Sharma. The IPCC report has scientifically established the increase in global surface temperature in very fast rate. How is it going to impact on Northeast region? Are we heading to witness more climate-induced migration in our region?
Yeah, I think that 1 degree Celsius, as I told you, that this is one part of a larger climate change scenario. So there are, as I told you, that could be intense drought. So there could be more rainfall. So that is also part of a climate change. So that means if a region like Northeast India, though, which we are having this flood every year, so just imagine the intensity and the frequency of this flood, okay, increasing over a period of time. Just think about how that is going to affect it, right? So I'll just give you an example. There is a very nice paper that was written in a journal, in a peer-reviewed journal, where the author says he works in Majuli, and the author has made very important observations. For example, he was telling that there are a lot of people who are migrating from Majuli to elsewhere. So, for example, there are many people who are leaving Majuli and settling in many other parts of the state, and in extreme cases, people are migrating from Majuli to other states of India in search of the livelihood. So this is happening. So this is not a something say. So you may say that okay, Majuli and the soil erosion and the flood is say is a recurring problem. So it's happening from a time immemorial, and people are adapting to. But let me tell you that the intensity and the frequency has increased. So this is likely to aggravate in the future also, as we are say clearing more forests, because that there will be more rainfall in say Tibet or China or say Arunachal. So even though Assam doesn't have any rainfall, but Assam will the Brahmaputra will bring those water to Assam, and there will be catastrophic say consequences. So that's why I think there will be a lot of migration issues. Particularly, there are the countries which are located at the low-lying area. For example, if you look at the Bangladesh, so 2 meter rise in sea water level. Just think about almost the whole Bangladesh will be submerged, and where will this people go? I think there will be huge say migration of people to different areas, right? So that can how are we say ready to accept that kind of migration in different countries because of the climate change? And it is not only about say low-lying areas. There are many climate-induced migrations that's happening in India. If you look at the CSC report, they said that there are hundreds and thousands of people who are migrating to urban areas, and these migrants are not because of say lack of opportunity or lack of employment opportunity in the villages. These are climate-induced migrants. So people are throwing in the major cities. So if you look at the most of the homeless people in Delhi and other areas, then if you talk to them, so there will more likelihood that you might get. They will say that because we cannot do any crop because the drier area become more drier, and there is very scanty rainfall. Earlier there used to be rainfall, and there is no rainfall. And the converse is also true. There may be more rainfall. There areas are being completely inundated. So we are looking at the extreme climatic events. So that will have a very catastrophic say impact on the entire demography of the people. Yeah. And Northeast also cannot escape from this, particularly if you look at the Brahmaputra floodplain and the Barak Hill.
Okay. Yeah. So, what are the prominently visible climate changes issues in Northeast India as of now?
Uh, so for example, I think I don't know whether so first I think we need to also make sure that the changes that we are seeing, whether these are the annual variation. So whether these are natural variation. So if you can rule out that these are not the natural variation, these are because of the climate change induced variation. For example, rainfall patterns, so for example, storms and other things. Then I think we'll be able to say that okay, these are because of the climate change. And there are studies which prove that the rainfall pattern is also say hit hard by the climate change, and also the rising temperature. So if you remember, even our time, so September and October during Durga Puja time in Guwahati, we used to wear like a warm clothes. So now, if you enter December and almost like a 15th December, there is no need to say wear warm clothes. So what is happening here? So is it a sign of a climate change? It is a sign of a say rising temperature. Of course it is, but whether it is because of climate change, I think that is the question. But given this trend of for so almost 1 decade now, I think we can say that this might be because of the climate change. So that is one issue. And second issue is that when I say the climate, the temperature is rising, so there are indications that animals are moving northward. So that means,
Yes.
so suppose there is a mountain, and the mountain, there are different altitude, and species are adapted to the different altitude. So if there is a rise in temperature, for example, many species are very sensitive to temperature. For example, a lot of snakes, even amphibians, frogs, birds, and other animals are also very sensitive to temperature. If there is a temperature rise, they will move upward, right, to a better to the next gradient of temperature which is suitable for them. So there are studies, particularly in Eagle Nest National Park, Eagle Nest Wildlife Sanctuary. So they found that there is indication that species now are moving northward. That means they are going upward. So the problem is that so this is the fact. So this indicates that the climate is rising, the climate is changing, and also like this season. I think you must have heard about the locust say attack last year. So there are swarms of locusts that came to North India, and I think when locusts come, then they create devastation to the crops. So why this locust come to those places? This could be also because of because there are a lot of areas which are becoming drier in Afghanistan or Pakistan, all those areas, and now these locusts are coming towards the India. So these are indicating that this not everything is not well. So we have like a kind of a devastated, created lot of disturbances, and as I said, so we are going to in Northeast India, particularly in Assam, the more flood in future. So maybe that there may be certain areas which will the drier area will become drier, and the areas with wetter areas becoming more wetter. And so if there are more flood, think about the consequences. What these are going to do.
I think you have also noticed some changes in behavioral patterns of the birds, like.
Yes. No, I think since the climate change, so the temperature is just the one part, because temperature control everything, right? In many birds or animals, because there are uh, animals which are ectotherms, animals which are endotherms, because there are certain animals for like us, which we are dependent on, most of us dependent on our internal temperature. But there are species like snakes or toads which depend on the external temperature. So if that is rising it, so that's creating problem. And there are many behavior of say animals. For example, in say lizards and in I think in turtles also. So most of this the sex is determined by the temperature. So now there is a so if the temperature is rising, the sex you will get the all the next generation with a one single sex. So these are going to impact the behavior, the kind of population of these species which are very sensitive to temperature. And also don't forget about the plants, because I think when people say about the wildlife, we have this tendency to just think about animals and exclude any plants. But plants are also very sensitive, so you'll be very surprised to know that the plants are still going towards poles, north poles. So we are in between this inter two ice periods. So we are just it's a retreating ice period, so interglacial period. So the plants are still moving towards the north, and the double hazard is that for movement you need habitat, right, for the animal. So what we have done is that we have fragmented the habitat. So even the plant, even a bird or animals wanted to move to escape the vagaries of climate, so they are encountering this fragmented habitat, which they are not able to negotiate. So
Yeah, and
that's a
uh-huh. And you have also, your research work is on gibbons, the only ape that we have in our region. And have you noticed any kind of, behavioral changes of these hollow gibbons? Like,
so look, I think
yeah.
So givens are dependent on plants, right? And plants are dependent on temperature. So plants are also dependent on like the whole phenology, right? From say uh, uh, setting of a new leaves, say flowering and the fruiting. This is cycle. Okay, there are certain temperature induced. So when temperature is changed, so they also change this different phenophases or different plant parts. So what is happening because the climate? I'll just give you an example. So in Japan, so they have meticulously kept the record of so when the Japanese the cherry blossom. Okay, so they meticulously kept the diaries, and people have recorded this since 1800 years, like almost last 1800 years they have data. So what they have found that the cherries are blossoming much earlier now. So almost 15 days prior they are blossoming. So that what that means that the climate, the temperature is say rising, right? Earlier when the temperature was lower, so they didn't blossom, but now they are flowering much earlier. So there could be mismatch, like all this nature. There are relationships when the flowers blossom, then you'll see that when the tree bear a new leaf, then there will be larvae to eat it, and because of the larvae, the migratory birds are coming. They're feeding on this larvae. Just think about it. Just rewind it, like just say prepone it by 15 days or 16 days. Larvae will emerge. Okay. By the time the migratory birds will come, there will be no larvae. So that because the trees are say bearing leaves much earlier, and larvae are already been like transformed into maybe moth or butterflies or other creatures. So for bird there will be nothing to eat. So this will impact the migratory birds which are coming to say in our regions and elsewhere also. So there are very clear indications. So in fact, there is a huge data set in USA that's saying that the plants are bearing new leaves 1 month earlier. So now, so these are the indications of the climate change. So
Yes,
for that also, I think what just like a Japan, I think we also need a long-term data set, right? We have a climate rainfall data from there are many say climate stations, and also there are many tea gardens where the tea states has meticulously kept the different say climate data, uh, and we have a certain confidence. Okay, because if you analyze this data for last 100 years or some 80 years or 90 years, you can see some pattern. So we need that kind of a data, for which unfortunately we haven't thought about it. Or and if you look at US and other areas where people have data for long time, I think we need to. This is also a time we need to establish this long-term monitoring programs of plants, animals, and different. Yeah.
very much. We have one eminent journalist, Rupak Goswami, environment journalist. He has
Hello,
a question
Rupakta.
for you.
Yes.
So he has his question is: what are the major takeaways for Northeast from this IPCC report? And for for past many years, Northeast has been hit by climate change. And with his question, I'm also know we have this question from our side also. So
Okay.
what are the mitigation measures? Like I think you can club these both questions. Yeah.
So I think the main takeaway from the IPCC report, for particularly for Northeast, is that as you rightly said, the climate change is hitting Northeast India for a longer time. But unfortunately, there are I think the data that is needed. For example, there maybe climate data, a lot of variable data are there, right? But we are really handicapped by some of the long-term data for other things. And so there are many, recommendations that IPCC also made. And remember, this report, this climate change is not a kind of a single regional, concern. So there are maybe different adaptations or mitigation measures that you can do it at a
Yes.
local level. Okay, once they flood, how to so since we said that there could be more episodes of flood, so how to mitigate those impacts? I think we can think about this. For example, how to say. So maybe there, missing people in many areas. They stay in the chambers, right? This is also kind of an adaptation to the flood. But I think these are the indigenous knowledge that people have.
Oh,
So we might have to explore this kind of, say, mitigative measures. So at a climate adaptation, I think that is what we need to, say, explore, because it's inevitable that this kind of extreme weather is going to hit Northeast India. So there is no doubt about it, and not only Northeast India, but throughout the world. So one more thing is the IPCC said that the climate change is that the incidence of fire will increase. So now how these fire episodes, right? We have seen that in the month of winter, during winter season, there are a lot of fire that you can see. So if there are certain areas which become very, very dry, right? Generally, the fires are not a very prominent feature in tropical forests. But remember that tropical forests are also not left because of the climate change. I think we should be very, very aware of the fire, which the incidence of fire. We cannot take it just a incidence of somebody putting fire in those places. So this may be with climate change in this. And let me tell you that, for example, unlike Australia or other places where there are species which are fire resistant, because these ecosystems were undergoing, fire resistance for a longer time. But Northeast India, this forest, they have never seen fire. So if something happened to this ecosystem, the entire tropical forest will completely collapse. I think we need to be very, very aware of those kinds of situations, because there are species which are evolved with the fire. For example, like that the grassland burning and other places which are very regulated. But just think about fire happening in the insecticides. So
yes.
I don't know how these species will cope. So
Yeah.
we need to be, yeah.
So yeah, I have another question, like how our rainforests can help mitigating climate change, or how vulnerable these rainforests are actually.
In fact, I think both bad news and good news. Uh, for example, good news is that there are certain pockets of forest we still have, and bad news is that most of the forests are in the secondary condition. So, secondary events. For example, uh, most of the forest fragments in Upper Assam, if you look at the character, are they will they able to uh, provide or act as a sink, climate carbon sink? I doubt. Okay, so most of the forest in this forest, like in this say reserve forest or this fragment, are not able to say sequestration carbon. So this is my gut feeling. So we need a detailed research to do this. But there are certain areas where we have kept those forests, because forests, as you know, that they stock carbon, right? So and how they are the forests are releasing, because when you extract those logs or when you deforest those areas, so you are releasing this carbon dioxide into the environment. So this is happening. So because that's where the deforestation is contributing to the global warming. So you will be surprised to know that Amazon, some part of the Amazons are now carbon source. They are not sink now. So which is alarming. So if the forest started becoming source of contributing carbon to the environment, then it's alarming situation. So whether our forest, so though it looks very, very greenery everywhere, right? But what is the quality of this forest? Whether this forests are able to sequester some carbon? What kind of species we are planting in those areas? Or so people generally say that plant tree, so that will take care of the climate change, right? But we need to be very, very cautious here that what kind of plant we are going to say plant in those forests. So the plant which are indigenous, which can absorb say carbon dioxide. So we need to choose those forests or those plantations very, very carefully. Okay. So I think for that, only the plantations, thinking of only planting trees is not going to help. So I think we need a very thorough understanding of how to restore this degraded forest. And so if you, so there is a, there, and this forest should not be replaced by, so my submission is that this forest should not be replaced by say, other forms of, say, um, trees. For example, you cannot replace a tropical rainforest with palm cultivation, or so you cannot replace this with say rubber plantation. So this forest should be there. Okay. Though
Yeah, we have a
if
separate question for palm cultivation.
yeah.
Yeah, we have a separate question for you, but one of our viewers, Samrat Sengupta, he has a question for you. How Northeast India will be impacted by climate change and vector-borne diseases scenario?
So thank you, Samrat, for this question. So as all of you know that climate change, particularly the is aggravating the emergence of zoonotic diseases, right, throughout the world. And this is like a very nicely supported by say deforestation, right, where the interface between humans and the wild animals are the interface is increasing. So people are coming more in contact with the say animals. So and that is going to be just like the corona. I think this corona is not the first epidemic or pandemic, and this is not the last, right? So this is not
Yeah,
going to be the last pandemic, because the climate change there are it's going to support actually the emergence of zoonotic diseases, and ably say in synchrony with other land use changes. For example, the if you start deforestation, and if you expose more animals to come into contact with humans, then you are going to say have more epidemics. For example, you know this Kaisanur tick disease in South India, which is partly because of the deforestation of that area. So it's a monkey fever disease. So that fortunately it is contained to only one part of the area, but it hasn't taken the form of an epidemic. But there are large chances that if we continue deforestation this, which is in turn changing the climate, so we are going to have a more zoonotic emergence of zoonotic diseases in this way. Because you know this
yes.
this is the biodiversity hotspot area, and we are
Uh-huh.
extremely rich in biodiversity.
Yeah, extremely insightful input, and in fact, we also realize sometimes that we need to learn as as a journalist, how to report and how to be skilled in reporting on those aspects. Like it's so things are very technical at times. And now I can come to you with this another question on palm cultivation that you just pointed out. The central government has recently approved a huge amount, that is rupees 11,000 crore, for implementation of national mission on edible oils, with a special thrust on oil palm in northeast and Andaman regions. So what will be the ecological impact of this palm cultivation in our region?
Yeah. So if you ask me, so I just would like to tell you that so invasive species in their native place are not bad, right? So where the invasive species are the unfortunate species which are in the wrong place at the wrong time. Okay, there's a right thing. So for example, if you think about the acacia in Australia they are native, right? But if it comes to Northeast India or India, they become invasive species, right? Or introduced species. So this is not their natural ranges, right? So, for example, palm cultivation as such, if you look at the per yield oil yield, right, per hectare oil yield, this is one of the best plants. Okay, it will give you more oil, vegetable oil, than any other oil. But the problem is that, so the climate or the areas which are suitable for palm cultivation are also the biodiversity rich areas. So the problem is there. So we have a biodiversity rich areas which are suitable for palm cultivation. So if you negate this over whatever 40% or 60% areas which are suitable in Northeast India and almost entire Andaman and Nicobar, right? Andaman Nicobar, almost entire Andaman Nicobar are suitable for palm cultivation. So if you negate this and do palm cultivation elsewhere, it's not bad. So leave the tropical forest, leave the grassland. Yeah, remember, so you cannot also, because the grasslands are also species which are also ecosystem which are highly neglected. So these are from the historically, even from the British time, they called them as a wasteland, right? All the marshes, all the wetlands, and all the grassland areas were designated as the wasteland areas, and then they were cleared, and the tea cultivations were created. And even now, I think the policymakers. So if you look at any area which is not, devoid of say plant or tree, so we'll say okay, this place we should clear it and grow plant, right? So that I think perception should be changed. I think these are the very distinct ecosystems. They have a distinct flora and fauna. Apart from this natural vegetation, so if we can do palm cultivation elsewhere, it's not a bad thing. Though it needs like a lots of water. Like it's a very water sensitive or water intensive crop.
Yeah.
So if we can do that, right? So it should not be like I went to a place called Khunsanjani in Dudnai in Gwalpara district. So there are they started the palm cultivation. I took my students there. So you'll be surprised to know that people say that okay, so we started this palm cultivation, right? And I asked them how much water do you need for one plant. They said almost 200 liters water. So and from where you are getting this water? They said from the borewell. So if that is going to happen, just think about the groundwater that will be completely depleted because you need water for the palm cultivation, right? And some of the areas, so though Assam is a floodplain, there are many areas which groundwater is not that high, right? So there are areas which though the climate is saying that okay, you should do this there, but it should not be at the expense of the groundwater. So because you need a lot of water for that. And when I ask them how are you going to so I don't know how much it is true. They used to say that we used to get this one insect, so that you need to pollinate, right? So that insect they used to get it from Mizoram. So Mizoram, all of you know that is far more ahead in terms of the palm oil cultivation because the new land use policy there is aggressively promoting palm cultivation, and they are saying that June cultivation is bad. Okay, and this already started having serious problems in particular area near Dampa. So where I went last time, and I saw huge areas were converted into palm cultivation. So palm cultivation is if you put them in areas where there are no forests, then it's okay. So there is a recent paper. I think I really want readers to go through it. So the paper by Umesh Srinivasan that was published in a very reputed journal called Nature Food. So where he said that palm cultivation is possible in India, provided it is done in areas outside of the native forest and the secondary forest. So in fact, that paper also suggested that we should use some of the low-yielding rice fields for the palm cultivation. So I think if all of you read that paper, it will be much more clearer. So there are certain advantages of it doing outside this. but you cannot do this. And remember that the water issue, and also remember the inequality, right? So there are these people in Malaysia, in Indonesia, where the local people who are supposed to get benefited by the palm cultivation, they are not. They are becoming much more poorer. Okay, all these large corporations, all the large industries, which are getting benefited by that. I think we should also look at the social impact of palm cultivation also, right? Because you remember, just wanted to give you one comparison. Suppose you are doing a shifting cultivation and a palm cultivation. So I'm doing a shifting cultivation and you are doing palm cultivation. You'll get a lot of money, right? But what I'm getting is I'll get 28 or 29 different crops in a season, right? And I can harvest this month, and next month if I go, I may again get say 8 or 9 crops, right? So that piece of land will give me a lot of vegetables, a lot of these things which you will buy with the cash that you earn from the say palm cultivation. So, and also, so I'll get free bamboo after 1 or 2 years, right? But in the palm cultivation, that will be not there, right? So if you measure it in this term, I think people say that there are research which say that the even shifting cultivation is much better than the palm cultivation. Though it's a in a
Okay.
short term you may get a lot of say economic benefit, but in the long term the local communities of people are going to be a big loser actually. And we need to be extremely very careful when we need to expand palm cultivation in Northeast India. So it should not be at the expense of already say completely destroyed tropical forests which are already declined. So that these are the last forests which are available to us, and we should not compromise on this forest, because at one say point we are saying that we need to reduce this carbon emissions, we need to increase the carbon sequestration capacity of our forest, and we cannot go and just destroy this forest and plant palm cultivation. I think these are these two are not talking to each other. I think so. This should not be happening. Yeah.
Yes. And monocropping is always dangerous for farmers. And yes, the climate inequality, the point you have pointed out, generally pointed out the issue of climate, I mean, inequality that is there, that will be there in monocropping system. I'm coming to the last question for you. You have been working for a long time on urban biology, conservation of urban biology, and your observations on impact of climate change in urban environment. Like, uh, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is impacting the every ecosystem, and the urban ecosystems are also no exception. As you know that, so there's something called the island effect, in urban island effect, where most of these buildings used to say absorb say temperature during daytime, and they used to release this during nighttime. So you hardly see any respite. So maybe 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the mornings you may get little colder, right? So and this is the same thing. So if the temperature is rising, so what we are doing, we are consuming more electricity. So we cannot say most of the houses. So I'll just give you an example. There are in Mysore, where I used to study. So many people when I visited many people's house, they didn't have the ceiling fan. So just think about it. Ceiling fan was not there. So the provision of ceiling fan was not there just 10 years back. Now people are buying AC, and they are uh, uh, say renovating their house so that they can put a ceiling fan there, right? So so these are the changes that happening in the urban areas. So at one point of time, I think it will be very inhospitable to stay, because most of us might need AC all the time, right? And AC means again we need a lot of electricity consumption. So electricity consumption means we need a lot of dams, right? And dams again comes with, though it's called the clean energy, but it's not that clean. Dams, right? The dams, in fact, dams are also contributing to methane production, so which many people do not know, right? And also just wanted to digress from here. So one of the biggest contributor of carbon, so which is there in Northeast India, is the cement factory. So, throughout the world, the 11%, I think around 11% carbon dioxide contribution is because of the cement factories. And you know that Northeast India is the hub of cement factories, and these are contributing to carbon. So this is a very least, say, research area. If we can do this research, we also know that what are the amount of carbon dioxide they are emitting to, contributing to the already, say, warmer climate, right? So yeah, so coming back to the urban areas, I think, as I said, the consumption will also go high, right? And it has a, so your action, okay, in one place is going to dictate, is going to impact something somewhere else. Okay, so more the consumption, so I think more, say, electricity we need. So we do not have this kind of a solar system, solar power, which are supposed to be a clean and green energy. And maybe some grassland in some areas will be destroyed to erect those power panels, right? And also let me tell you that there is a substitute for this fossil fuel driven vehicle. They wanted to change it to electricity car or something else. But remember that the battery, right? So from where the so for to create the battery, you need ions, right? These ions, ores are again lying beneath the tropical forest. So in order to uh, generate batteries, you need this nickel or aluminum and bauxite. So where are you getting those from? So in fact, there are these studies which found that a lot of this nickel is extracted from Sulawesi forest. And since this ore are at the surface of the say forest, so these are not. So you may ask, why not do a say open cast, say rat hole mining or something like that to extract the ore in? No, these are just beneath the surface. So you need to remove the vegetation in order to get those ions, right? So though it looks like a renewable or say an energy or the green energy or the clean energy, in fact it is also creating some problems in some tropical forests. So I think we need to go very cautiously of all these things. So these are like choosing a bigger evil than the lesser evil, right? Which we need to choose. So whether we should go with the evil which is a bigger evil or the lesser evil. And you remember that recently there is this plan of say, erecting this solar power in areas which are also inhabited by the great Indian bustard, which is a bird, right? So they are only like a very handful of individuals which are surviving in the wild. So now, since this looks like as I told you, the wasteland. So there is a proposal of erecting this huge solar panel so that to capture those ones. But remember that you are doing this at the expense of a very critical wildlife ecosystem. So you are replacing that with this one. And if you do that, then this particular species will be in danger for survival. So I think there are these pros and cons of everything. So as I told you that there are this lesser and smaller, like bigger evil. So you need to choose between these two.
Yeah, so much of insights and inputs. Thank you, so much, Dr. Sharma, for decoding the IPCC report of India's northeastern region, for our region and highlighting on the actionable agenda. We are grateful to you for accepting our invitation to this discussion. We are also grateful to our esteemed viewers for your kind cooperation and active participation. We will bring you more such discussions on environmental issues of the region. Please log on to www.nezine.com or download the Nezine app from Google Play Store to stay updated. Good night. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.